Thanks, Michelle. Okay, great. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the public meeting this Monday, the 7th of November. Can I have a mover to call the meeting to order? Moved by Councillor McDonnell, second by Councillor Lang. All those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Approval of the agenda. Are there any additions, deletions, or amendments? Seeing none, can I have a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda? Moved by Councillor Luck, second by Councillor McDonnell. All those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Thank you. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we'll roll right into item 4, new business. 4A, Walter McLean zoning amendment. Ms. Haley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before we get started, I am required to read wording under the Ontario Planning Act. So this is a public meeting under Section 34 of the Ontario Planning Act. Any person may attend this public meeting and or make written or verbal representation either in support of or in opposition to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Council of the Township of South Glengarry before the bylaw is decided upon, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the Council of the Township of South Glengarry to the Ontario Land Tribunal. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Council before the bylaw is decided upon, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the OLT unless there are reasonable grounds to do so. So we have 3 applications before us this evening. The first one is known as the McLean Zoning Amendment. Mrs. Loonan, you're welcome to join us at the table if you'd like. So this property is located at part of Lot 19, Concession 1 front. Oh, I'm sorry. I have an error in this. It's Concession 1, County Road 2 in the Great Geographic Township of Charlottenburg, located at 18897. The subject area is approximately 5 acres. This is a key map of where the property is located. So to help orient the public and the committee, this is Orchard Road. Marlin's Orchard is located in this location, and this would be County Road 2, and then obviously the St. Lawrence River. So this property was recently subject to a severance application, known as B8822. And when we go through a severance process, the decision is often subject to several conditions. And one of the conditions that was requested was a zoning amendment must be applied for and approved to permit 3 existing dwelling units to remain on the retained lands. And I'll provide additional information to that in the next couple slides. So if this is approved, then what would happen is the township will clear this condition and the United Counties would then be able to issue final approval to the consent. So on the proposed severed lot, there will be 3 privately serviced dwelling units and a small bunkie style structure. So now I have some images to explain this a little further. This would be existing dwelling number A or dwelling A. And this would be facing on County Road 2. This would be more of a side view of dwelling A. This is another dwelling that's located on the property that we've labeled dwelling B. And then this would be the main dwelling on the property. It's up a hill, and this is more of a zoomed in view. These dwellings have existed for many years, and in fact, there used to be more dwellings on this property that had been removed really not that long ago. And that wasn't uncommon for some of our waterfront properties to have multiple cottages or seasonal dwellings. So the purpose of this amendment would be to rezone the subject property from rural to rural special exception 19 to permit the 3 existing single detached dwelling units and accessory residential structures to continue to remain on the property. And all other applicable provisions of zoning bylaw 3809 as amended shall continue. Many people might ask, why are we doing this? Why do we need this process when these dwellings are not new? They've been around for a long time. And the reason why this process is required is because there's been a change made to the property. So when you're proposing a change such as a severance, where you're removing some land, that newly created lot has to be brought into conformity of the bylaw. Currently, we don't allow 3 dwelling units to be located on a structure. We only allow a secondary dwelling unit. And that was the reason for that zoning amendment and condition, was to bring it into compliance If it's approved, then the property owner can continue having those 3 dwellings and having those dwellings occupied, and can be able to sell that property free and clear someday if the amendment is approved. So the subject property is currently designated rural district in the county official plan, and the proposed amendment conforms to the official plan and the provincial policy statement. To date, I've received no written or verbal comments, nothing from members of the public. We did circulate the application to the United Counties Transportation Department. The reason for that is it fronts on County Road 2. They had no comments or concerns with the application. In fact, they had their own conditions that would address their driveway and access and things. And so this zoning amendment application will be subject to a decision of council, and a staff report, including a recommendation, will be brought to council for a decision in the near future. And I do hope to have that on our November 21st agenda with time permitting. So that's all the information I have this evening. The reason why Mrs. Lunan is here is because she's purchasing the retained land of the severance. And so I think she graciously offered to go through all the condition clearing. So we've been guiding her throughout the process, and I'm sure she's happy to answer any questions regarding the process, so thank you.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions of the committee or Councillor Luck?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Haley, I have a question with regards, and it's maybe not so much directed with this property, but I thought I saw something from the province recently where now, in order to help with the housing crisis, they're allowing for not only your dwelling, your secondary dwelling, but now also a garden house. I can't remember the wording that they used, but does that not apply already and kind of bring this in, or?
So through you, Mr. Chair, I believe you're referring to the recent announcement, probably not even 2 weeks ago, from the province in regards to Bill 23. So that is a bill that is proposed, and it's not law yet. It'll go through the process to become law. Based on the review of the proposed changes, it will allow up to 3 dwelling units. It is not clear, though, if it will allow 3 independent houses, because everything we read references a unit above a garage or a carriage unit or different terms that are used. So we're obviously going to be following the government announcements very closely and reading the regulations very closely to make sure, does it mean 3 separate dwellings, or does it mean that they have to be units within accessory structures or detached structures, basically. So we'll learn more as we go. When Mrs. Lunan applied for the application, that announcement wasn't out yet, and nor did we know what the announcement was going to be. We heard rumblings of changes, but we weren't aware of the details of the changes. So this will tidy everything up regardless of what the decision is, and will allow Mr. McLean to finalize his consent.
Thank you.
Good question. I asked her that the other day. Are there any questions of the public? Did you want to say anything, Diane? No? All righty. Well, thank you very much. And we're going to move on to item 4B, La Chance Mackay zoning amendment. Ms. Haley.
So thank you. So this application is located on part of lots 8 and 9, concession 1 in the geographic township of Lancaster, now in South Glengarry, and it's located at 6258 151st Avenue, and the subject property is approximately 0.36 acres in area. This is a key map of the property. So this property is outlined in black, or it's solid black. And just to the north of here would be Old Highway 2, and then of course to the south would be the St. Lawrence River. So the property previously contained a house and a garage. The house has since been demolished without a permit, which I'll explain further. The owner had contacted the township to obtain a permit retroactively, as they were not aware that one was required. So a demolition permit cannot be issued, as the garage is not permitted to remain as the primary use on the subject property without the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. And if the amendment is approved, a demolition permit will be granted for the demolition of the house, even though it's retroactive. In working with the property owners, we learned that the house was not in great shape. I think they were concerned for safety reasons. I don't believe, they did this on purpose. They felt it was the right thing to do. And so we offered them the process to either request to allow the garage to remain as a main building or be permitted to be a main building, or to also demolish the garage. So now we're going to show you some photos of the subject property. So if you look at the existing garage, it's in pretty decent shape. They've done a good job cleaning up the property after demolishing the house. So this would just be several different views of the subject property. So after working with the property owners, they chose to apply for the amendment. So the purpose of the amendment would be to rezone the subject property from limited services residential to limited services residential exception 10 to permit an existing residential garage to be the main permitted use on the subject property. And all other applicable provisions of the zoning bylaw will continue to apply. I understand the property is recently up for sale because I have been answering questions from buyers. It does appear that maybe the buyers that I spoke to are interested in building something. I even talked to the current property owners and explained to them that if they went through this process and if it was approved, it doesn't stop someone from building a house. It just allows the garage to remain until such time they're ready. And then building a new house would come along with a new septic system, meeting setbacks, etc. So the subject property is a designated rural district in the county official plan, and it does conform, this application conforms to the official plan and the provincial policy statement. I've received no written or verbal comments to date regarding the zoning amendment. As I mentioned, I have received a couple calls from buyers. And this application is subject to a decision of council, and a staff report including a recommendation will be brought to council for a decision in the near future. And again, I hope to have this on the November 21st agenda, time permitting. So that's all I have, Mr. Mayor. The applicant is here, and I'm sure she can add more information if needed.
Yep. Just a quick question. Is the zoning not limited service residential? LSR?
Yes.
It said it was rural.
The designation is rural.
Oh, designation.
Yes,
Okay,
sorry.
perfect. No worries. Any questions or comments of the committee? Did you want to add anything to what Ms. Haley said? No? Okay. Yeah, I see that. Okay, yeah. Questions from the public? Just come up, state your name and your address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Bruce Green. I'm 6280 Pleasant
Just
Drive.
press the gray button in the middle. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Name is Bruce Green at 6280 Pleasant Drive. I'm aware of the property. Hope they can do something with it. It was in sad shape. I'm just wondering about is the lot of adequate size for a septic system?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I think that's an excellent question. We have many properties in your area, as well as other areas in our waterfront that have existing undersized lots. Undersized lots don't create the easiest process for rebuilding, and they often end up with the requirement of what's called a tertiary septic system. Generally, the lots aren't large enough to obtain a conventional or to accommodate a conventional system. So the municipality is obligated to issue a building permit for a new dwelling, providing they obtain a septic system permit first. So we need to be sure when we're working with the property owner or future owners that they go through that process to demonstrate it can be serviced, it can still meet the setbacks, it has a building envelope to accommodate a dwelling, and if the answer is yes to all of those questions, then it can be reconstructed. We have seen properties reconstructed on properties a little bit smaller than this, so there's evidence of it being done, but the soil sampling always has to be done to ensure that it can accommodate the system.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Are there any other questions of the public? And nothing of the committee? Seeing none, okay, we're moving on to 4C, Allaire, temporary use bylaw. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So this property is located at part of Lot 6 and 7, Concession 3 Front, Gore, which is known as Lapeer Road, in the geographic township of Charlottenburg, now in South Glengarry. And the property is approximately 11.7 acres in area. This is a key map of the subject property. You can see it's a unique triangular shape. It's located on the north side of the 401, south side of the railway tracks, almost at the end of Lapeer Road. So the parcel of property had an area that was already cleared. So the originally partially cleared and vacant property has recently had some heavy machinery, shipping containers, miscellaneous equipment, etc., placed on the eastern portion of the lot without approvals. I believe the property owner, being a new property owner, maybe didn't realize that there was rules around outdoor storage, what you could or couldn't do. So we started receiving some calls from the public questioning what was happening, the amount of traffic, the delivery of the products, etc. And so we reached out to the property owner, who was agreeable to come in and meet with us. At that time, we asked the property owner what the purpose of all of the belongings were. And I believe it was clear to us that they weren't proposing to operate a business, that it was basically needed to store these products for a period of time. So 2 options were provided to the property owner. One would be to apply for a zoning change. A zoning change would be typically required if you were wanting to create a use that wasn't permitted, you were maybe opening a business, constructing a structure that couldn't meet the requirements of the zoning bylaw, etc. But in this case, that wasn't what they wanted, so they opted to apply for what was called a temporary use amendment. So I'll explain that a little bit further in a couple of slides. So these are images that were recently taken of the property. You can see that they, have placed quite a few containers, different pieces of equipment on the property, cleaned it up a bit, cleared it out a bit. And these are just continued pictures of all the belongings that are on the site. And here's a few more. So the purpose of the amendment is to permit open storage on approximately 2 acres located at the east end of the vacant subject property. All other applicable provisions of zoning bylaw 3809 as amended shall continue to apply. The effect of passing this bylaw amendment, if approved, will permit open storage on the east end of the subject property only for the duration of up to 3 years from the date of passing of the bylaw, if the bylaw is approved. So I want to explain what a temporary use bylaw means, because that's language that we don't use every day. It's not a tool under the Planning Act that everybody uses. And typically you want to apply for a temporary use when you're not sure if you're going to need approvals for a long period of time, you're trying to test something out to see if it'll work. There's a variety of reasons why you would apply. So I'm just going to read to you the sections of the Planning Act. So the council of a local municipality may, in a bylaw passed under section 34, authorize that temporary use of land, buildings, or structures for any purpose set out therein that is otherwise prohibited by the bylaw. So currently, our bylaw doesn't allow for outdoor storage anywhere as an only primary use. We do that for obvious reasons. It can be an eyesore. We don't make taxes off of items that are stored outside. It can create unnecessary traffic. It could create the need for services such as garbage pickup, emergency services, things like that, when generally we want to see structures on the property first. The Planning Act then goes on to say that a bylaw authorizing a temporary use shall define the area to which it applies and specify the period of time for which the authorization shall be in effect, which shall not exceed 3 years from the date of passing of the bylaw. And then it says, despite subsection 2, which I just read, the council may, by bylaw, grant further periods of not more than 3 years each during which the temporary use is authorized. So if it was approved, if the 3 years expires or is close to expiring, they do have the right to come back and ask for an extension if they wish. So Lapeer Road is located in an area that's a rural district in the county official plan. And in that rural district, it allows for a variety of uses, but again, it implies that your uses are based on how a building or a structure is used. And then, of course, it would allow for farming and those types of things that, that wouldn't need a structure. So to date, I've not received any written comments regarding this application. However, at the time of activity, when the belongings were coming to the site, we received multiple phone calls from members of the public expressing concern. We did receive a complaint, but I've not received anything through this formal process. And then this application will be subject to a decision of council. I will be bringing a staff report with a recommendation to council in the near future. And as I mentioned to the previous one, my goal would be to have it on the November 21st agenda, time permitting. So just to summarize, if the amendment is approved, the approval will be in effect for a period of up to 3 years. Council can provide extensions if they wish. And it would be around the east end of the property where the 2 acres were the area that we had highlighted on the map. So we do have the property owners here this evening with us, Mr. Mayor, so if there's any questions, I believe they're prepared to answer them, so thank you.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the committee? Seeing none, Councillor Lang?
Yeah, my question is, what are you up to? Like, there's obviously lots of containers there. I can see in the picture, it looks like a
So just to give you a little rundown.
an impromptu mini storage, and then I see the fuel tank, so, you know.
Well, here's the lowdown of the story. As Mrs. Haley's aware that I've got 2 other properties in South Glengarry and invested quite a bit of money in here. And I'm going through the process, and the process is shy of being very slow, a very slow process. In the meantime, I sold my commercial property, and I've retired. I'm a electrician, linesman, and it's the stuff that when I sold my property, it's all good stuff that I had to take. Now, having said that, the closure of the sale, which was the old Bumstead building down in South Stormont, you're maybe aware of the property. It's 21,000 square feet of commercial complex. And it started in a process like this. They asked for extension, which I kindly agreed to my detriment, because the closing date never shifted. So upon that, I was stuck. I had nowhere to go. So I'm coming to invest in South Glengarry on 2 other properties, investing close to $2 million. I've bought for $750,000 worth of land, and this is a temporary thing while I liquidate all my assets. And as much as it looks like everything is organized and well set up, I've already gotten rid of some, and I plan on getting rid of all of it. But right now, I'm actually homeless, believe it or not. And when I say that, I'm living in an apartment, which I've never had in 61 years of my life. Anyways, 32 years in business, you accumulate a lot of stuff. And being a linesman, you've got bucket truck, line trucks. I had backhoes, pole trailers. I got rid of a lot of stuff prior, believe it or not, coming into South Glengarry. And I apologize if I've offended anybody, because it's not my style. If anything, I try to cooperate with anybody. If you ask Joanne, I try hard, but it's a temporary fix. So if you're asking me when and how long, I'm going to throw the ball right back at you, is when and how long is it going to take to get a permit. And I'm in the process. I'm patient, and I think I'm doing my diligence in that aspect. So having said that, if there's any other questions, feel free.
Okay. See, there's members of the public that are here that live on the road who called me. Did you guys want to add comments to the record, public record? Just say your name and address for the record, James.
James Lapierre, 19596 Lapierre Road. No, I'm probably too close to the mic.
Mr. Lair, would you shut your mic off, please? Thank you.
Okay, we seen all the equipment coming in. There was an excessive amount of traffic for a while. We still see you, I'm retired too, by the way, so I'm home quite a bit. And I see the vehicles going back and forth. It almost appears there's a business running out of the place right now. I don't know if that's because you're trying to liquidate your material. Some of our concerns were we have children, grandchildren on the road, and they kind of run loose because it's a dead-end gravel road, and it's a nice, quiet residential road. My neighbor bought there for that purpose, just so that her kids wouldn't have to be as careful as they would, say, in a village setting. So there's some concerns about the amount of traffic that's going to be going in and out of that road. Some people seem to have a very lead foot. I would love to put some speed bumps in there. But the question comes back down to, you bought the property not knowing that the bylaws were as they are. I've never, in my experience, seen anybody purchase a property and do what you're doing without some idea that there's bylaws, and every township is different regarding what can and can't be done with the land. To come in with about 20, it looks like there's about 20 sea cans in there and some other equipment. To come in with that amount of stuff and not look into it a little bit first is kind of disconcerting. We've had issues in the past because the property was for sale. There was an excessive amount of traffic just because of the property was for sale, and people from, not from the country, I'll put it that way, come flying through there at 60 and 70 miles an hour. They're going by so fast, the rocks are flying, it sounds like they're towing a trailer, and they're not. So our question and our concern is, are you guys prepared to be careful there? Because there's a lot of, we got kids and we got grandkids, and they're out playing on the road, and that's just the nature of that area.
Okay. Thank you for-
So, as far as your temporary thing goes, you're saying to the council about a permit. Is that so that you can liquidate, or a permit to build a new facility somewhere else? Get rid of your stuff. Because, like I said, it almost looks like you're running a business out of the place. We see, there's a certain couple of vehicles we see in and out of there quite regularly. So we thought maybe you were running a business out of there, but you're liquidating. Anybody else want to add something? Thank you for your time.
Thanks, James.
Hello, my name is Jack Patterson. I live on the 19661 Lapierre Road. And if he wants to liquidate, I work for the biggest auctioneer in the entire 3 United Counties. I can have that liquidated in 8 hours, 100% right on that lot. My other biggest concern is the speed of the vehicles. There's trucks going down there. One of my neighbors chased a pickup truck down there the other day doing 92 kilometers an hour. She had to do to keep up with that pickup truck. I have 5 grandchildren that are with me a lot. There is no excuse for that at all. None. So if they grant you, just please make sure that everybody is slowed down. And I agree too. I am retired as well. And to me, there is a business being run out of there. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments of the community? Sorry.
Hi, my name is Brenda Richardson. I live at 19596 Lapierre Road. I also do not really approve of them wanting to do what they're doing. Because yes, our grandchildren is our place a lot on the weekends and stuff. And there's a lot of traffic now. And do they slow down? No. And it's just, like, we also bought there too, because it was a pretty private area, you know? And now it's just, is too busy. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep.
If I may, all the people on that road lived there because it was a rural setting, quiet rural setting, not a commercial operation. The commercial operation has changed everything on the road, even the quality of the road. Our road is very poorly maintained to begin with, although the township does their best, but this added traffic just puts more load on the road, a lot more wear and tear on the road. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Deputy Mayor Jaworski.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Warden, I have questions for Ms. Haley. Around a temporary use is two questions. So 3 years, that's the standard, right? Is there leeway on that? And then my other question is, where does open storage begin, and where does where does that line, if it, I mean, I have to admit, when I saw the fuel tanks, it sort of made me wonder if it, you know, well, I mean, maybe they're unused fuel tanks, but still, the first thing that came to mind, I'm like, well, you're fueling things, it's a business. But where does the line go from open storage to commercial, and what avenues does the township have to enforce open storage? Thank you.
So through you, Mr. Chair, the maximum that we can grant for the temporary use is 3 years. If council wanted to consider providing 1 year, they certainly can do so. And it would be a maximum of up to 3, and extensions. So you could issue a 1-year approval, or a 2-year approval, or a 3-year approval, and then extensions could be requested thereafter. And there's no cap on the number of extensions on the Ontario Planning Act. They just have to go through the public process. In regards to outdoor storage, we don't have outdoor storage permitted anywhere in our bylaw, and that's pretty common because you want a property to have a primary use. You want a structure to be there. So once a structure is there, outdoor storage is permitted in certain types of zones, and in our bylaw, they always have to be located in the rear, not visible from the street. We expect it to be fenced when it's a commercial property. So if this was approved, perhaps we could do a development agreement where we could define or limit how that storage could work, but the outright approval doesn't come with conditions. We would have to follow up with an agreement, and we'd have abilities to do that through the Municipal Act, to do a development agreement, if that's something that council wanted, to try and control the area, control the layout of the belongings and things like that.
Okay, thank you. I have one quick question before we go. I guess for you, Mr. Larry, you had said that you have permits on the go. Is that a commercial property that you're developing? Because you would need a commercial designation for this stuff.
Again, this is only used for storage of my equipment and my personal belongings. Those fuel tanks, it's because there was some fuel left in them. They're not even my, I don't even own them. It's St. Pierre Fuels, and as soon as they're empty, they're gone. And I can't even pump them out because they work on electric, and I don't have any power down there. So, having said all of this, I apologize for anybody. I'm a grandparent. This is my son. There's no tolerance for that stuff, and nobody's ever stopped me, and it wasn't me speeding up that road. So, is it always my people that came up that road at that speed? I've already spoken to all of the guys to make sure that just slow it down. I even seen some of the properties had put these little signs on, slow down and whatever. I mean, I'm very respectful when it comes to that stuff. I've never been a guy to try to go against the grain. I try to go with the grain. But the world's changed, and again, I ended up with this condition where my sale ended up with the closing date. I had no other choice, and to go through the process, I just didn't have time.
I just want to add that the permits themselves are actually for his residential that he bought on the water, and he's just waiting to build his house. Some of the containers themselves actually have the material for the house And then the rest, again, he's liquidated his business, well, he's trying to liquidate his business. He closed it on December 31st, 2021. So he's actually retired, like he said, but he's really in the process of liquidating. He just wants to build his house on the water and then retire, and that's it. So there is no business being conducted at that property. Just want to say that.
Okay.
There's really nothing.
Thank you very much for your comments. So that concludes the public meeting for this evening. Motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Lang, second by Councillor McDonnell. All those in favor? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for coming along, and we're starting our council